out to the show and fall at your door. We got that info for you. Touchdown on that plane and buy anything. More than just a podcast for you.
The first edition of the Tim for YouTube show for the year 2020. And boy, is this year coming in with a bang. So again, I'm your host, the hostess with the mostest, Jamesetta Cleveland, and joining me today is Nate Pruitt, Ahmad Smith, and Curtis Blair. Uh, in light of questions that we've received about the show and feedback that I've been getting from the parents, we decided to kick the show off with recruiting. That's the question that everybody is asking about. How's recruiting changing? How's it going to morph? What do we do with COVID? So I'll give all of our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves, and we'll dive right in. So come on, gentlemen, introduce yourselves.
My name is Curtis Blair. I'm at the Baylor School down here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I've been here for 15 years. We are a day slash boarding school that goes 6 through 12. And I'm really excited to be part of the show again.
We're glad to have you.
Ma, go ahead.
Yeah, don't
Thanks,
be shy.
man.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm Ahmad Smith. I am actually a club and newly minted high school coach. I work in a inner city high school by the name of Murrah High School. Pretty much largest or one of the largest school populations in the state of Mississippi. I also work with my home club called Central Jackson Soccer Organization. We are in a kind of a rebuilding season, but we do have a few teams more on opposite spectrum. So we've got real older girls, a few teams there, and a real young age group. So a lot of room to grow. Somewhat play some college soccer, but of course that's irrelevant because we're all coaches. So we're just enjoying getting better in the process and trying to help us get better ourselves in the craft, as well as help those who might need help with this process as well.
Thanks for coming on.
All right. And I'm Nate Pruitt. I am the founding and head soccer coach for Lead Academy in Nashville, Tennessee for both ladies and the boys soccer programs.
Wow. Thank you guys for coming on. We got coaches from all over, lots of variety here. So we're going to dive right in. The first thing I want to level set us on is we've done a lot in the past, basketball, football, baseball, even driving, but I want our parents to know, how is soccer recruiting different from other sports? Don't be shy, gentlemen. Some of you have gone through the recruiting process.
I'll take it. This is a good question because I think it's not as different in my mind as people may think. Historically, or just from my own experiences, I've had buddies, and this is me going through the recruiting process and now coaching through it. You have your similar leagues out there. You have your AAU circuits for basketball. You have your elite volleyball leagues for volleyball. There, might be some interchange over baseball. Football primarily, I think, doesn't branch off into that, and you'd have to help me with that, James, into that club or academy type model. But I think the biggest word, and I'm sure my colleagues would kind of back me up or give some more detail into this if they choose to, is the word academy. So if you are not getting into an elite youth soccer academy that is, if not sponsored, but some sort of an affiliate of a Major League Soccer team, that would be the biggest difference, I'd say. And I guess you heard it said there's levels to this thing. So if you are in the high school level, I would say your chance of recruiting getting slim to none, pretty much. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that your coaches aren't develop relationships. That's one of the things we're all doing, right? But the key buzzwords there for soccer and differentiating those from other sports are club and academy, I would say.
Okay, so this is the part where my new moms define what's the difference between a club and an academy.
That's right. Um, so I'll give you an example. I am probably from the smallest, or some people might say irrelevant. But good luck with that because we got prime time now at the Jackson State University. So, but so just that plug for Jackson State. But so club and academy. So from our experiences, clubs develop from an interested group of parents. They may have some common connection. It could have been, basketball, football, whatever. They decide, well, there just isn't an offering in our community. There isn't a YMCA league, or there isn't a gym, or there isn't somebody or some organization or business or fitness center that's offering soccer services for my youth, and I want my child to play soccer. So that starts with a small group of parents with a common vision. Hey, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I'm from South Africa. But I happen to be selling insurance in Mississippi. That's where my career takes me. And a story like that pretty much birthed my league, which was Central Jackson Soccer Organization in the early '90s. And the club structure is simply that. It is those parents. You take a team. You take a team. I'll coach. My son's 8 or 9. I'll coach his team. Your son's 12, 13. You'll start their team, and then you get the fringe parents. And you don't, force them. You say, hey, what's he doing after school? You might want to come try this out. And that process kind of grows organically. That looks different for, I think, up and coming grassroots clubs like ours, right? And a lot of them had no idea what soccer was, only that they liked it. There are also club structures, and I think my colleagues will say this too, that, you have highly qualified, practitioners and coaches and former professional players who come in with, resources and backing and things like that, where they're able to secure facilities. And so, long story short, the club structure is a more grassroots kind of mom and pop, small group gathering, where the academy is the highest level of competition for our game that is investing in youth development. So they are, and it's built that way to kind of mirror or mimic what's happening overseas. So where, what they're doing in Europe, new moms may have heard names in the soccer world, if they're, in the soccer world, like Manchester United or Manchester City or Barcelona or Real Madrid. Those. Say again.
Like I've heard of them. Yes.
Right. Just use
There
the
we go.
bus teams.
We moved to the area that Jamesetta is familiar with now.
Yeah. See what I'm saying? That right. So, so if you use those popular teams, or those buzz teams, popular teams like that, think about what they do to compete at that level, and that's how you define what an academy is. We're looking to build what we see in Europe to try to help our youth here to play at the highest levels.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Nate, for you, how's soccer recruiting different for other sports? Want the different perspective, and then club versus academy? Because I'm going to be honest, for those people who are here in Tennessee, I don't have that same club I would have never said grassroots mom and pop for club, not the local ones that I've been exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, you're spot on that. So, but of course, part of that is, especially like the county that you're thinking of coming out of, mm-hmm. and all that. So especially in like the Middle Tennessee area, yes, if there was going to be recruiting, a lot of that recruiting came out of club, but a lot of that club came out of not only the affiliation of parents, but the affiliation of parents that had a certain amount of financial backing that they could put towards that club. And so in the process of doing that, and Ahmad actually touched on this a little bit, some clubs do have like certain set requirements. And so a lot of clubs in the area, and they will help sponsor coaches in this, but they do expect their coaches to move up through the rankings. Now there is actually a scaled ranking system for coaches that they can become certified at different levels through USSF. And so United States Soccer Federation. And so, which is the same federation that well, recently they've made the news because they've been hot water within equality of pay with like the women's national team and the men's national team, and so that was how like the federation itself got its name in the news. But that is the backing federation for all of that, and so that goes from DCBA in ranking. A would even be a professional level coach. The interesting thing is if you were to take your USSF A-level coaching, which says you're good enough to coach professional over here, you were to head over to Europe to one of the UEFA countries and bring your certification in, they would say, great, we'll start you at a B and see if you can certify up to an A. So like even internationally, that ranking is a little different. But like especially down in Brentwood area and whatnot, which I know you're familiar with, club teams actually expect, especially when you're starting to deal with like your U15s, U17s, especially, they expect coaches, they look for coaches that are a higher rank. So this, if possible, they look for a B or higher.
So let me make
And
sure that I understand this, because like in football and basketball, it is, and even to a certain extent, like baseball, like I, as the observer, did not, I can't remember a time where a group of football parents went to a coach and said, you know what, I'm gonna need you to go get some certifications. I'm gonna need you to go
nope, doesn't happen.
go get some clinics. I need you to progress as a coach. Like I'm like, look, now I want to go back to my football parents and say, okay, clearly we have not understood how it works here. So in the soccer world, there is a unified training body for your coaches, which I'm hearing that's I love that. And then two, there's an expectation from soccer parents that, okay, you can start here with a certain level of knowledge, but we as parents need to see you progress through our governing body, and there's a definite expectation that you do progress.
Well, that's much more common with club, and the fascinating thing is, because of course I'm somewhat in the midst of the process. I don't need any of those certifications. I just have to pass my NCAA test and prove that when your son wants to come play for my team, I'm not going to hand you car keys. Like that's all I need to be an NCAA coach, is like to prove that I'm willing to follow the rules and that I have done what I did and passed the test to certify. And I don't actually need any of the USSF. Like I just have to have the resume. But because there are some of these clubs have a certain financial base, then part of their criteria then becomes, well, let's go ahead and get you there. But also plenty of them are willing then to sponsor coaches moving up through those ranks. So that was actually a fascinating thing that happened years ago in Brentwood, was their club team was like 150th in the nation or something. Like they were abysmal. And they brought in a coach who actually had put in his money and was A certified, and he got them in to be top 5 in the nation at a period of time in competition, because obviously he had professional experience, but he ended up down at IMG and training the youth teams for the US men's national team and all sorts of stuff. So like clearly he was just he was different. They've never been able to replicate it. They fell right back out of the rankings when he was gone. Obviously an exceptional coach makes just exceptional differences. And that's why parents are willing to pay for that. But club and academy, Ahmed was right, are structurally the best way to get player recruited. But of course there can also be a financial burden. So see, like, it's part of the reason why you don't see in soccer near as many fantastic inner city athletes making their way all the way through and being seen as these top recruits for soccer programs around the nation, because they don't get quite the same looks coming through their school teams necessarily, because there's just so much disparity in um, in high school soccer.
So Curtis, remember when you guys were talking to me when we did our soccer show and you
Yeah.
said that the better you get at soccer, the more expensive it is. It, is this is what Nate mean? Is this what you guys meant? This example that Nate
Yeah.
is giving us?
Yes, we are backwards in our country of
Absolutely.
the better you get, the more you have to pay. Now some of that has changed in terms of like say, and I think this is what they were talking about is when you get to MLS Academy for the youth academy, you're not paying anything at that point. If your son is good enough to play with one of MLS academies, then they pick up that. But if you go to a local club, such as like a Tennessee soccer club, then you're going to end up paying um,
Okay.
money to play, and that's what it comes down to. If you're good enough to make this an MLS academy, then you are not paying to play. And that's changed a little bit over the years because before the
Yes.
MLS academy started, and even the girls DA before it folded, it came to the point that they were trying to figure out how do we get our best players on the field, and that was one of the ways that they did it is you take away the fees. But now, because of that, a lot of clubs that aren't especially on the boys' side in the development academy, now you're paying. You're paying a good amount of money. Um, but everyone's chasing that dream. A lot of parents are willing to pay that money because they're chasing that dream that their kid's going to get that scholarship. That eventually in the end it's gonna work its way out. And the thing, Tennessee is different. And going back to what Nate was saying is, Tennessee is a little bit different because if you're a club here in Tennessee, even at the grassroots level, you have to have a minimum coaching license, to even coach one of the little youth teams. So I do like the part that at least we have a coaching requirement. And they're, usually they're a weekend, 2 weekends, depend. I've been part of the Tennessee soccer coaching education instructor, so it's been good to see that part of us educating, parents that don't really understand a lot about soccer, that didn't grow up with it, just to give them a base because we feel like if we can educate the grassroots level, then all of a sudden we're going to have these people that continue to play, whether they go to college or not. I think this game is a game that you can play that's one of those what I consider as lifetime sport. We want the 40, 50 or 60-year-old men and women running around the field still and having a good time with it. And I think that's the good part. I went up through all the license courses. I've had my A. I've had my A for probably about 15 years now. So every year it changes, but I look at it as there's some really good A license coaches out there. There are some really bad A license coaches. A license does not make you a coach. Your relationship, your knowledge, your coaching education, those are things that are going to make you a coach. So, but if you look at in terms of what you're going to get, if you look at the development academy, they request that you must have a B or an A to coach in their academy. A lot of the teams like, Tennessee Soccer Club, the Chattanooga Red Wolves, they are all requesting you to be able to have a B or A eventually. And they're going to help pay for some of that. And it's not just because of the piece of paper, it's because I think they want more education. We ask our teachers to continue their education. We ask, everyone else that has to continue their education. And I think coaches are the same way is it's a learning experience. It's a lifetime of learning experience. It's not just, hey, I'm getting a piece of paper and now I'm done. No, it's continue that education. So there are some really, really good coaches that don't have any license. It's out there. And I truly believe that. And I think it's the thing that we've got to get away from is even as players have to pay as they get better. It's the same thing with coaches. It's sort of backwards as well, is because these are not cheap courses that you have to go to. We're talking thousands of dollars to get your license, and some people can't afford that. Some of the bigger clubs can offset that, but even that part, we've got to help with the coaching education that have come free for all people. Tennessee soccer 10 years ago, if you wanted your entry license, they were all free, which I thought was brilliant. It should be. You should be able to go to any state coaching course at the very grassroots level, and it should be free. But now, because of the cost and everything else, from higher up, they're starting to charge, and now state associations are starting to charge. But that's me getting on my soapbox. As you can tell, I feel like education should be free. Especially when it comes to soccer.
I'm just amazed at the demand. Like,
okay, so I look at the football world a lot, and I talk to parents about, who's training your child. Do you check to see if they have certifications? But I promise you, the majority of the time, when you look in the football world and you see great trainers, some of them all they did was play high school football, and they feel like, and they're, you know what I'm saying. So this is very novel. Football parents, we have some work to do. We really have some work to do.
Yeah.
This is amazing to me. I'm like, oh, there's levels and there's requirements. I'm just geeked about this. So this was, if nothing else, I've learned a ton.